Good morning. As you've heard, my name is Max Meissner, and I am the CEO and founding director of Cytoswim Limited. We're currently hard at work at developing the next generation of sperm selection tools. I'm here today to tell you about an investment opportunity in Cytoswim. We are currently fundraising for a EIS qualifying seed round of £500,000 at a pre-money valuation of £2 million. Now, we're going to use this funding to finalize product development of our technology, get it through certification, scale up our manufacturing, and then launch Spermaline in the UK, the EU, and the US. We're then targeting at least 50,000 sales of the device by 2026 for revenue of just over £6 million and exit potential of at least 35 million by acquisition from acquisition-happy companies such as Cooper Surgical, Fujifilm, interestingly enough, or Merck Scientific. Now, before I get properly started, let me just introduce the team and the company. My own background is in nanotechnology, in microfabrication, and in biophysics, and I have significant experience in industrial research. I'm one of the founders of the company and have been serving as its CEO since its foundation. Sandy Leung in the audience today is our technical expert and is soon to be promoted to Chief Technical Officer. Her PhD was in polymer engineering, and before joining us, she was heavily involved in operating a manufacturing pilot scheme of a pharmaceutical company. Chris Sheehan is our current board chairman and brings with him decades of experience in medical device marketing and strategy, and has in the past worked with giant medical companies such as Johnson & Johnson. He will shortly be moving to a role as chief business officer in the company. James Lapworth is our business development advisor and mentor, and an extremely successful tech transfer officer. In the last few years, he's been instrumental in spinning out numerous companies, of which OTM has invested in a few, and has helped these companies raise nearly £10 million of early stage funding. Not here today, but still members of the team are Vasily Kanzler, our academic co-founder and scientific consultant, whose lab at Warwick carries out cutting-edge research into the physics of microsumers, as well as Alan Pacey from Sheffield University. Professor Alan Pacey has an MBE for services reproductive service sciences and is one of the world's leading andrologists, as well as the face you're most likely to see on TV anytime there's a story about sperm in the news. Cytoswim was founded in 2019 and is based in the Warwick Science Park just outside of Coventry. To date, we have funded our scale-up and prototyping with around £100,000 in pre-seed investment from OTM, as well as just over £300,000 in grant funding. And we're now fundraising to bring our sperm selection technology to market. Now that takes me on to the big question of why should anyone care about sperm selection? Well, approximately 1 in 6 couples worldwide are now likely to suffer from some form of infertility. And despite infertility still unfairly being seen as a woman's problem, over 40% is exclusively attributable to male factors. A problem which is only getting worse year on year, with headlines such as sperm count drop could make humans extinct. Male fertility is dropping drastically over the last few decades, and unfortunately, open discussion of this issue is still treated as somewhat embarrassing or taboo. And crucially, existing technologies such as IVF just aren't capable of keeping up with this decline in fertility rates. Average success rates in the US, for example, are now declining for the first time in decades. And in fact, with a per cycle success rate of just over 20%, well over $2.5 billion each year spent on IVF that simply doesn't work. And that's not even to mention the fact that IVF is an invasive and painful and emotional procedure. So there's a huge amount of human suffering related to this IVF failure. Despite this sort of startling reduction in IVF outcomes and male fertility in general, there are still very few therapies or technologies on the market that address male infertilities. In part, that's because no one can really agree as to what's causing it. So some theories are plastic in the water or hormone runoff, and solutions include things like a healthier lifestyle or eating better. But if you're trying to conceive and struggling, you don't really have the time to get a better diet and spend a few years exercising to see if that fixes it. Clearly, new technological solutions are required to address these issues. And this is where our technology comes in. So our proprietary Spermaline technology relies on a sophisticated asymmetric microstructure, which can be sort of thought of as an obstacle course. Sperm cells sort of swim through it, and only the very fastest and only the healthiest cells get through. This allows IVF clinics to use only those cells that offer the very best chance of success to their patients. And in practice, it looks a bit like this. The video on the left is what goes in, and the video on the right is what goes out. And you can see quite clearly the cells on the right are a fair bit faster. Now, we have tested this technology extensively and still have numerous ongoing experimental collaborations with labs across the world. So far, the results have blown us away and have significantly exceeded our already high expectations. Sperm samples put through our device have up to 3 times as many high-quality, fast-swimming sperm cells. So that's these grade A guys over here, what clinics sort of categorize as the best, most likely sperm to help with fertilization. More importantly, our technology does isolate cells with 90% less damage to this critical DNA payload of a sperm cell. This is a quality metric that's commonly associated with failure to fertilize, failure for the embryo to implant, or even later stage miscarriage. Now, the actual most interesting bit about this is always, what does it do to IVF outcomes? And we can't test this technology on human patients until medical approval has been obtained. However, cattle are an extremely effective model system for IVF, and we've been carrying out an extensive cattle IVF study over the last year. We've fertilized something like 1,200 embryos to date, and it's here where the results of our tech really shine. Sperm samples that go through the spermoline sort of obstacle course lead to, on average, 35% more implantation viable embryos. This is probably the largest single increase in success rates that any technology has offered cattle IVF to date. However, a new technology does not thrive just on technical performance. So over the last year, we have been collecting end user feedback and have arrived at a product that is completely compatible with existing IVF clinic workflows. We want to make it as easy as possible for clinics to use our technology, and our final prototype doesn't require any extensive training or expensive equipment and works perfectly with a wide range of consumables and tools already used by clinics. It is a single-use, sterilized polymer disc, approximately 5 centimeters in diameter, that we're targeting a price point of £125 for. We've come to this price point by looking at how much value it adds to the IVF clinics and how much they can pass this on to their patients, and how much they currently charge their patients for comparable IVF add-ons. In practice, it is extremely easy to use. There are 4 steps to it. You fill the device with a liquid for the sperm cells to swim through. You then add sperm cells to the inlets. You wait 30 minutes for them to swim to the middle. I like to call this the mandatory tea or coffee break. And then you extract the cells and use them for fertilization. In terms of our competition, our most direct competition for this sort of technology is a company called Zymon. They have a microfluidic technology that involves sperm cells bouncing through a very narrow channel and just letting them sort of spread out by this mechanism. Our device outperforms Zymon on a few key metrics. First, it has a much wider usage range, capable of being used for a range of assisted reproduction techniques rather than just very specific, very small volume stuff. And that's because our device can handle more than 100 times more sample volume than Zymon's device, and thus yields far more viable cells at the end. Additionally, our device is manufacturable with cheaper and more scalable injection molding compared to laser etching, giving us much higher margins and much more scaling potential. Now, 2 further incredibly important aspects of any medical technology are, of course, intellectual property and regulatory approval. On that front, we have filed a patent 2 years ago for our technology, covering not just the structure at use in our device, but also quite a few different permutations, spacings, shape changes, all manner of things we can protect our unique selling point with, and also refine our technology in the future. This patent has now been in the PCT stage for about a year, and it's going into the national stage shortly, which in part is why we are now fundraising. In terms of regulatory approval, we've engaged an experienced and capable team of regulatory advisors that we've been working with for about 2 years now, and we're certifying this device as a Class 2 medical device in Europe and the US. This classification is a lot easier to obtain than more invasive medical therapies, and we are well underway with this process and are aiming to obtain certification by spring next year. We will then use the Medical Device Single Audit Scheme, or MDSAP, to sort of ease access into key second phase territories such as Japan. As soon as we've obtained this medical approval, we're going to pursue quite an aggressive go-to-market strategy focused on keen early adopter clinics who are very keen to increase their success rates and thereby outcompete other IVF clinics, as well as working with medical device distributors for wider market reach. We already have a letter of support from Micron, the UK's largest andrology supplier, for this. Additionally, we'll be assembling a scientific advisory board, including key opinion leaders such as Alan Pacey and a few other people that we're courting at the moment, in order to drive wider adoption through their reputation. The current market for these sort of IVF consumables or IVF enhancement technologies offers us quite an ample opportunity to carve out a significant niche. There are over 5 million cycles of IVF carried out each year, each of which requires sperm preparation. In addition to this, there's probably another 5 million sperm preparations carried out for other supplementary assisted reproduction techniques that aren't used as widely as IVF. Approximately 1.5 million of these are in Europe and the US, another 1.5 in Japan and China, and a significant portion of the remainder in countries such as Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and Brazil, all of which are part of the MD-SAM certification scheme. Now, this number is constantly growing, and we are still very, very far away from the estimated global need of 1,500 cycles of IVF per million people per year. Now, unfortunately, recent events across the globe with COVID are only likely to exacerbate this, as delaying IVF due to COVID, which has happened all across Europe and the US, is unlikely to drive success rates higher. In fact, a lot of couples have really been negatively affected by these sort of delays in their IVF treatment. We are aiming to launch our sperm-aligned technology first in the UK by mid to late next year, followed shortly by key European nations such as Germany, France, Spain, and then roll out to the USA. We will then look to expand the product to other smaller EU nations, or easier to access EU nations, followed by Japan and China in future years. Now, in addition to the clinical market, there is a supplementary opportunity here for us, and that is the veterinary market. Cattle IVF providers can charge their customers up to £150 per viable embryo. In validation trials, our device produces between 2 and 6 more embryos than the control tests, offering significant value for bovine IVF providers. In fact, David Priest from Tyndale has expressed an interest in using our technology universally in his practice. And we have several other similar interested parties. On this front, we are working with Bovitech, which is the largest cattle IVF provider in the world, as well as a network of cattle IVF clinics across Ireland, Scotland, the Netherlands, and New Zealand. And while the bovine IVF market carries out only about 1/10 as much IVF as the clinical sector, it is completely unburdened by regulatory requirements, and thus offers us a compelling opportunity for early revenue and customer validation from actual customers. In fact, Cytoswim is currently planning to begin sales in the sector by the end of the year, and then sell to just a few of our key large IVF providers. Now, we've developed this route to market using extensive market research. I was lucky enough to participate in the Innovate iCure scheme, which is a send researchers abroad to actually learn something about customers scheme. And that let me travel the world for 3 months speaking to potential customers and partners prior to forming the company. I obtained quite a lot of feedback on our value proposition and business model, and feedback has been extremely positive across the board. In particular, Professor Helen Picton, the scientific director of Leeds Fertility, has referred to any technology that can improve IVF outcomes as the holy grail. And Professor Hildebrandt from Berlin has suggested we could use this technology to help him save pandas or lions or other rare endangered species. Now, this market research and testing is ongoing. We are constantly seeking new partners. We are constantly contacting new IVF providers, both human and clinical and cattle. And in fact, we've just started testing some of our devices in an embryology clinic in Greece and are getting extremely positive feedback from them, both on the performance of the device and the usability of the device. Now, with this exceptional performance data that we've obtained over the last year and the overwhelmingly positive feedback from end users, it is clear that our sperm-aligned technology really has the potential to significantly improve patient outcomes in the IVF sector. So that is why I'm here today, asking for your investment and help so that together we can bring this technology to market and help millions of couples worldwide who are struggling to conceive along the route to parenthood. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm of course happy to answer any and all questions.